Hey, I'm Josh from Vacuums R Us in Arvada and Boulder, Colorado again. I'm going to talk to you today and show you how to change the belt on the new Oreck Elevates. This is also going to show you how to replace the brush roller. These machines are kind of a bear. They were designed after Oreck was purchased by Tektronix Industries out of Hong Kong, China, and they're completely different design than your old classic Orecks. They're much harder to work on. Parts are easier to break. I'm going to walk you through this. I'm going to hold your hand. If you don't feel comfortable, find a local dealer and bring it into them, and they'll be happy to help you out. So first of all, Oreck chose to step away from standard Phillips head screws for these machines. Phillips head screwdrivers, everybody's got one in their junk drawer. They decided they didn't want people working on the machines and fixing them themselves. So when you get under here, you're going to see a weird star-shaped screw. It's not a big deal. It's not the end of the world. It's not alien technology. This is called a Torx, and this specifically is a T20. That is the size. If you look up T20 Torx bit, I'll post a link to something in there in the description. Those are the screws you're going to be taking out. Now you can either get bits and put it in a screw gun. You can also just get a screwdriver that is a T22. So we got a couple screws we're going to take out, and again, this thing is weird. The base plate isn't going to pop up on this, and in fact, like the old Orecks, the base plate isn't going to pop up. We're going to unscrew it from the bottom, and then the top is going to pop up. So we got a couple screws here. Apparently, I don't know how to use a drill bit. There we go. Do not take out. There are a couple Phillips head screws here. There's a couple standard Phillips head screws. You actually don't want to take those out. Those are considered user serviceable, and those hold in your little sweeper here, and they hold in your little side bristles. You don't need to take those out for this purpose. For this purpose, you're taking out your Torx T20 bits out of the base of the Oreck. So counting, I believe that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Actually, I don't think I took that one out. There we go. We should have 7 screws out of the bottom of that Oreck. So I'm going to flip it up. I'm going to be careful not to lose any screws. They're going to kind of pop out now. Grab them. So I got 1, 2. Here I got my 7 screws. So now, and this is going to be awkward. This is just my habit to work from this side of the machine. I'm going to lean the machine back, and the hood is gonna come off. Maybe manhandle it a little bit. Okay, and then I guess I kind of misstated. You are working from the bottom, but you have to kind of take the bottom off from the top is the easiest way to do it. And the bottom tray is way different than the old ones. So I'm just going to point out a couple things in here real quick so you know what you're looking at. Right over here we have a printed circuit board. The classic design that David Oreck had, where we had very simple components. The cord went into the motor, turned it on and off. They were not prone to failure. Tektronix Industries apparently wanted some of these high failure rate components in here, so they throw in a circuit board. Just kidding. I'm sure that wasn't their motivation. What the circuit board does is it controls the function of this machine, where it senses that the magnet is spinning on the brush roll and will shut the machine off if your brush roll stops spinning and it does not sense the magnet. So over here we have a belt. On the Elevate series, they actually have a belt that theoretically doesn't break. If you take this belt and you stretch it, you cannot stretch this belt, right? You cannot stretch it. This is a classic style Oreck belt, and you see very stretchy belt, right? So in theory, the Oreck Elevate machines, you shouldn't be needing to do belts on them. But occasionally it can happen where you hit something and this system somehow fails. Imagine that, and you burn up parts of your belt. Maybe you get this clicking sound. So it is not impossible that you're going to have to replace your belt. Anytime that I'm inside of one of these Orecks, I always check my motor mount screws because they tend to loosen up. It's also not unusual that from their factory in China, they didn't necessarily get screwed down completely when they potentially put it together there. So I always, torque down a little bit too hard. I always check just to make sure these motor screws are screwed in tight. The problem is if these screws are loose on your Oreck, what's going to happen is this fan housing will rack back and forth, and it will wear out your fan, and it will wear out both of your fan housings, and ultimately do pretty significant damage to the motor, fan housing, and stuff like that. I'm going to pop the brush roller out real quick. I did another brush roller video, we'll link it below, but I covered all the different types of brush rollers. This is what I typically refer to as a classic XL21 style brush roller. It's kind of a narrow roller, right? The XL roller is a little bit fatter, but what's specific to this machine is that you're gonna find that they have a magnet on the roller, which is what engages the machine and lets it know that this brush is spinning uninhibited. If you replace your brush roller at some point because the bristles are worn out, and you find after replacing your brush roller that your machine shuts off after a few seconds, you didn't break something. What likely happened is you purchased a brush roller which did not have a magnet. The old style Orecks did not need magnets in their brush rollers. Those brush rollers are still sold because they're less costly. So you may have purchased one of those, and now the machine doesn't sense a magnet and thinks that it's jammed up. So I'm gonna throw this back in again real quick. I'm actually putting special down on this one. Boy, that's pretty loose. So this housing, this machine I believe is actually our floor model, which was used pretty extensively. My housing's starting to wear a little bit. So I am gonna go ahead and shim this. What I do is I take a little cable tie, right? And I look for looseness over here where it wears on the housing, and it wears just because the brush roll is constantly being pulled in this direction. And I'll put that right there, and you'll see that it tightens up pretty good. I'm a little loose over here as well. So I'm gonna grab another zip tie, and I'm gonna press that zip tie, slide it in right here. Just push in. It looks like just a little bit of that one's gonna go in. And then I'm gonna cut these off right here. And this is a really handy trick because as the housing wears, your brush roll is gonna start being off-centered. And what's gonna start happening, and I know longtime Oreck owners have noticed this, your belt will start sliding off the end of your brush roll or off the end of your motor into your housing and burning your housing. And that's because over time the housing wears and the brush roll starts to shift. By putting your shims up here and then back here, you're gonna realign that brush roller so it's straight. So to put the belt on, and these can be a little bit tough because these belts don't stretch. They're pretty rigid. I hook it on the motor first, and then I kind of put it right there on the edge of the brush roll pulley. And then with my other hand, I'm gonna turn that brush roll forward towards the front of the machine. And you'll see how I kind of just fed it onto it. Now I'm gonna reverse, now that I've got it hooked on here, I'm gonna reverse. The brush roll in use is gonna spin towards the back of the machine. So by hand, I'm gonna spin it towards the back of the machine. And if you watch that belt, you'll see that it actually is gonna center itself all on its own on that brush roll pulley as I spin it. And I like to make sure that it's centered before I put the machine together, because if it was off center a little bit, when I put the lid on, I might be rubbing the side of the machine and I may potentially break my belt immediately. It's a lot of feedback we get from customers, particularly ones who think they're engineers. They'll bring the machine in, we say, hey, or they'll come in by belts, we'll say, hey, remember next time we install belts for free. Bring your machine in, we'll do it while you wait. And they say, no, I'm an engineer, I can install a vacuum cleaner belt. And then they come in an hour later and they say, you sold me a defective vacuum cleaner belt. It broke instantly. And it's typically because they didn't hand set that belt, roll it a few times, and allow it to center itself right on there. So that's a great trick. It'll save you a lot of broken belts. You know, one thing I forgot to cover while I was in there, and boy, this is talking about broken belts, people buying belts and they break instantly. Super important. Understand, when you take your machine apart for a belt change, no matter what model machine it is, no matter what brand it is, check your brush roller, hold your brush ends, and spin that brush roller to make sure that it spins real free. There should be very, very little resistance. If you do what I'm doing right now, and your brush roll just spins a little bit like that and then stops, your bearings may be bound up, they may be rusted, they may be blown, who knows. But if your brush roll is sticking like that, it's going to burn your belt either immediately or very quickly. So always check your brush rolls. If you bring the machine to us for a belt change, we're gonna do that in front of you right there. If it's possible to service it and kind of grease it up, clean out those bearings and stuff like that, we'll do that for free while you wait too. It's no big deal. It's real quick, you get in and out real quick. So I'm gonna go ahead and put these screws back in. I usually start with my center screw and make sure everything is kind of held in there. And then what I might do is kind of just drop the rest of them where they go. Screw gun is super handy if you have one, but if you don't, you know, it's really not the end of the world. If you get that T20 screwdriver, it'll take you a couple minutes longer than it's going to take me, but you will get the job done. Lickety split. Like I said, I'm gonna put a couple links in the description. We'll link to where you can get the brush roll with the magnet if that's something you need. We'll put the part number of the brush roll for you as well. Also put the part number of the belt if that's something that you need. Sometimes those can be tough to find. Thanks for watching. Like, follow, whatever it is the social people do. But I appreciate you watching the video today. I hope I helped.